Let's go ahead and get into it. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Life of a Champ podcast. For today's episode 252, we're going to be discussing this concept that I would like to call self-improvement purgatory. And what that really means to me is something that I will go ahead and discuss on today's episode. If you do not know who I am, my name is Champ, and I help men win. Essentially, with today's episode, hopefully being able to get you to understand this very, very necessary process that goes along with improving your life, right? With entering self-improvement space, you're going to run into this concept. And what you do about this is going to determine your future, who you are, and the lifestyle that you will live in this life for sure. So make sure you go and follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, X, at Life of a Champ podcast, or at Life of a Champ on most platforms. So tap in with that for sure. But getting into it, man. Self-improvement purgatory, right? This concept is something that I wanted to go ahead and break down because it is something that I feel a lot of people in the self-improvement space are really, really going through, and you can run into it in many different ways, but essentially, if I wanted to go ahead and break it down, right, self-improvement is pretty self-explanatory. The purgatory part, this is going to look like mental anguish, suffering, right? This is obviously something that we all go through when it comes to the self-improvement process, right? Obviously, at the very, very beginning, you have the initial foresight of understanding the concept that you aren't as great as you could be, right? You have potential, right? You aren't as good as you could be, and obviously that's a very, very harsh reality to go ahead and to internalize. But you know what you do with that concept, what you do with that understanding, is going to literally set your whole life up for either failure or success, right? If you realize that you aren't shit and you don't do anything about it, there goes your future. There goes your whole life, right? But if you realize that you aren't shit, you're early on in the game, just as I am, right? Then obviously you go ahead and you potentially can go ahead and do something about it, right? And this is the option that I hopefully would have you go ahead and select, right? But I want to make this very, very clear, right? With this self-improvement purgatory, this is the entry for self-improvement. You need to suffer. You need to have these things that build your character. And obviously, we're going to all suffer in different ways, right? We're all different levels. I'll go ahead and explain it like that, I guess you could say. We're all different levels in different categories in life, right? And with that being said, putting in the work is an obvious thing, right? Putting in the work and not seeing result. And here's the thing, not seeing immediate result, right? It's the concept of instant gratification versus delayed gratification. But there is something a little bit more interesting when it comes to that, right? So I'm going to give you an example, right? This is something that I've been going through, and something that maybe you potentially in some way or form might be going through the same thing, right? So I'll give you for an example, right? I'm about to hit next month, or in 2 months. In 2 months from now, I'm gonna hit 5 years in the gym, right? Been working out pretty consistently for 5 years, right? At least a couple times a week for pretty much like 5 years, right? For me, if you know me personally, this is something that is a part of my character. This is a part of the habits that I uphold, and this is part of the identity that I've been pretty much for the last 5 years. With that being said, as I'm still going, still making slight improvements, I haven't seen the results that I had seen in my first couple of years of working out. And I would say I've been roughly about the same weight for about 3 years. So I'm roughly at like about anywhere from like 155, depending on fasts and different things like that I've done throughout the years. I've dipped down to about 143 since I've gained the weight. Initially, I started at about 120 pounds, and then I gained like 20, 30 to 40 pounds, damn near. And with that being said, I've stayed roughly about the same weight. So I'm about 155. I got up to about 166, and that wasn't too long ago. But I'm roughly in that range, and I've roughly been in that range. Actually, to be a little bit more specific, I've been in the range of 100 and I would say about I want to say 150 pounds to 162 pounds, 163 pounds, something like that, for a long while. And I just broke that the other day with working out consistently and things like that, eating a little bit better. But I think that's very, very interesting because a lot of people in my same position, they're not getting the same result, right? Obviously, when people go to the gym, they're after a certain result. They're after a certain weight. They're after a certain specific goal. And of course, I'm a person that obviously is going to be goal oriented as well. Obviously, I want to gain weight in my particular case because obviously you gain weight, you look bigger, you're stronger. That's exactly what most people in the gym community, that's what they want to strive for. They want to get bigger, they want to get stronger, right? Or they want, obviously, you have people that want to, lose weight and of course, cut and things like that. But me, being a skinny guy, I obviously want to bulk up, right? But I've been roughly at the same weight for 3 years, right? Most people in that position that are not seeing that instant gratification, that aren't seeing that instant result, they aren't even seeing really significant progress, a lot of them would quit, right? You're not doing, you're not being, you're not becoming, or are you, exactly who you want to be. You're not doing and achieving the goals that you had set out for, right? So a lot of people in that position, they're in that mental mind frame of suffering, of not making progress, of feeling like their work is being put in and the result is not being shown. So it is almost a waste of time. It's almost a waste of energy and all those things, right? But quite frankly, me, I've never seen it that way. I've never seen it as this is a waste of my time. I'm not doing, I'm not becoming, I'm not whatever, right? I've never seen it like that because I understood the very, very basic concepts of self-improvement, right? It's not always about the result in which you can see. It's even more important, in my opinion, in my own personal experience, the person that you become in that area or while approaching that barrier of resistance, who you become in that instance, right? So for me, I'm a person who's been putting in work towards a specific goal, right? I'm not seeing result, but I'm still putting in the work. I'm still stacking the days. I'm still making progress in that specific way. I'm still building the character that will eventually get the desired result that I am after, right? And like I said, so many people quit, and what you do with that is up to you. I'll give you another example of this, what I would call self-improvement purgatory, right? Where you're putting in progress, you're putting in work, you're not seeing enough progress. What do you do outside of that, right? So another one, I've been doing the podcast, and I just hit yesterday was actually my 4th year of doing the podcast. There's a few things. I've taken a little break. I'll get into that in a second, but going back into the topic, right? I've been roughly at the same subscriber count for doing this for about 4 years. For about a year, I've been pretty much stagnant when it comes to my subscriber count, right? But I've still been posting. I'm right now coming off a break. I spent about a little bit over a month on break, and in that time, I turned 24. I had, I'm living my life. I have a daughter, so I'm making sure that she's okay. I'm attending to her as a good parent would, and things like that. Which is now I want to come back. I want to be able to tell the stories of the life that I've lived, right? When I wasn't able to go ahead and post, I want to now tell the stories of what had happened. But with that being said, a lot of people who would have been in my same position would have quit. You are pursuing a purpose. You are not seeing the conventional result, which would be probably like maybe views or maybe subscribers. And in that instance, why keep doing it? Why keep posting? If you're not seeing the immediate result, if you're not seeing the progress, if you're not seeing what everyone would ask for, as far as what they would actually look for in terms of the progress, then why keep doing it? Why keep going, right? And this is something that I've asked myself, right? I've never contemplated quitting ever, but I have obviously, you can't help but to feel some type of way by not getting the most desired result, or I guess you could say a desired result for sure. When people ask you, hey, how is the podcast doing? How is it going? The reason I started the podcast is to help people out, right? The reason I started the podcast as well is to have good conversation. The reason I started the podcast is to improve my life. right? To be able to instill and internalize my own values, to figure out what I believe in, to test my character. Those are part of the reasons. Those are all reasons in which I decided to do this, and I decided to pursue my purpose in this specific way. And not seeing that result is obviously a very, very hard thing, right? But I understood thoroughly that if I kept doing this, if I keep doing this as I am doing it right now, the result has to come. You cannot, the only way that you don't push forward and don't make progress, at least eventual progress in some capacity, is if you genuinely quit. If you see it as a failure and if you quit, right? That's not something that's in my DNA. I don't quit, and it's not part of my character to even be in that specific way, to even think those specific ways, right? And that is the character that you should strive to build. The character that doesn't quit. The character that says, you know what, this is hard. But it does, just because it's hard doesn't mean that I'm going to quit. So ask yourself the question, what are certain areas in my life right now that I'm trying to improve upon that I'm not seeing the immediate result, and why is it even worth for you to keep going? Ask yourself the question. What are your actual reasons? What is your deeper why? And what I've come to find out is those people who quit, those people who they hit that barrier of resistance, they quit, they slow down, at least in some type of capacity. They all have something in common. They don't have a very, very strong reason for why they're doing what they're doing. The reasons in which and here's the thing, if they do have any reasons, most of the reasons are going to be very, very superficial. Very, very, let's just say, not as practical as they could be. And that's just the reality of it. And that obviously shows. In due time, that will show. Who you are, what you've built, what you believe in, will be shown over time. And hopefully that's something that is actually worth seeing. Hopefully that is something actually worth being. Hopefully that is something actually worth striving to become. Because for me, yes, I'm not seeing the exact result that I would like. But I've, for damn sure, have been building the character that will get those results, just because of the fact that I have been putting in the work and I have never quit. And I will never quit. So, what is keeping you going? How can you override this inevitable self-improvement purgatory that would eventually come up? Who are you going to be in that moment? Are you going to be the person that just quits? Or are you going to be the person that says, you know what, this is hard, but I'm better than this. I'm better than to just quit. I'm better than to just neglect my purpose. So, ask yourself the questions, man. People don't understand thoroughly enough, and maybe they've heard these, maybe they think it's cliche, and obviously, I still agree it is a little cliche, right? Maybe you've heard of this, right, where the people say, the journey is the destination. What does that even really mean, right? The journey is the destination. Obviously, it's cliche, but obviously, it's true. The journey is the destination, and the way in which I receive that is the person you become along the way is the ultimate reward. And that's obviously what I've been after, because of my mindset, because of the things in which I've chosen to go ahead and pursue. That is what I'm after anyways. I'm after the character evolution. Evolve to inspire something that is behind me, and it's there for a reason. You evolve to go ahead and inspire people. The person that you become, the result, whether people see it or not, is what is inspiring. And I've been inspired by other people. I've been inspired by the stories in which they've told about their struggle, where they can't see the light, but yet they keep going. Because they understand that a person in this journey who is not willing to quit will see result. Inevitably will see result. These barriers of resistance shouldn't stop you. They should fuel you. They definitely will test you, but they should most definitely fuel you. They should be your motivation. They should be your inspiration. And hopefully you can find a deeper why. When you pursue something, if you are pursuing anything, if you aren't pursuing anything, then obviously you have more work to do, right? If you can't find ways in which you can, find an act that is going to embody the pursuit of your own purpose, you have more work to do, right? What it comes down to is you're going to have these things that come up that are inevitably going to be difficult, that are inevitably going to be off-putting. But how you handle that is going to say everything about your character. And that is what it's for anyways. The person that can tell great stories, right? That is the character. That is the character. But self-improvement purgatory in some form or fashion is inevitable for every single person that decides to go ahead and improve in this life. You will inevitably hit these points where things make a little less sense. Things are going to be much more hard. But the way you handle that is completely up to you. And like I said, hopefully it's going to be within your best interest. Hopefully it's going to be pushing you towards the character that you would like to be. Because if not, we already know. We already know the result of that, right? If you quit, we know who you are. We know what it looks like. But if you don't quit, we don't know who you are. We don't fully know what it will look like in the end. You don't. And I would strive to be on that side. You never know what it can look like. You never know where you can be in a year. You never know where you can be in 5 years, right? So, I urge you to keep pushing. I urge you to recognize that there's going to be moments like this that will inevitably come up. And of course, if you're early on in the journey, you could say, you know what, that will never be me. That'll never be me. I've been constantly putting in work. I've been constantly seeing result. It'll never be me. I will never see the day where I don't see any result. But you have not lived enough life yet. That's what I would say. When you live enough life, you understand that these moments will inevitably come. Life will obviously throw you things that you were not ready for. Well, rather, that you could never anticipate. I'm not going to say you weren't ready for them, but that you would never anticipate. You would never think that this would come up. But I do believe this is where character is built. This is where character is tested. This is where most quit. But what separates, hopefully, you from everyone else is a deeper sense of understanding. A deeper sense of understanding that the person that you become along the way is the ultimate result. The ultimate reward. And the ultimate result, obviously. So, if you ever find yourself in a position where you're not seeing enough progress, you're not seeing enough whatever, just know that if you keep working, you will inevitably see exactly what you've been looking for. And you must approach it that way, right? The people that you admire, the people that inspire you, they've inevitably went through this exact phase. They thought one day, they'd be in this. They had this life envisioned for them, and maybe it didn't go exactly the way that they had wanted it to go. That's the case for a lot of people. A lot of people, when I first came up with the concepts of this podcast, I originally wanted to talk about people and their inspiring journeys, right? Where they were exactly who they are, but yet no one knew them for what they've done, right? And I found that to be very, very interesting because there is going to be a point in time where your reality and who you are don't necessarily match. There's like a lagging. I heard Chris Williamson talking about this, how your identity lags reality by about a couple years, and I think that concept is very, very interesting. But essentially, just don't quit, man. Don't quit. This is gonna get hard. It's meant to be hard, man. And honestly, it would almost be a curse for everything to go right. When you first try or when you first attempt, without any resistance, without any pushback, obviously that's ideal. But what kind of stories can you tell with that? What kind of actual stories can you tell? Because here's the thing: the stories that I like to hear are when people are struggling, when people didn't see the light, but yet they kept pushing forward. Those are the stories that I like to hear, where it didn't go exactly how they wanted it to go, but yet they kept pushing forward. Their ego was tested, their character was tested, but yet they never quit. Those are the stories that I like to hear. And like I said, it's not always going to go the way you want it to go, but that's okay. That is okay. I'm gonna read some of these comments and then I'm gonna get back into it. It's good, brother. Finally back on. Let's go. Appreciate the comment, KJ. Appreciate it. Champ, you have came so far on this journey of life, and now that's why you're teaching us to be better. Yes, sir. Take care of your loved ones as needed, man. Don't worry about that month. You good, bro. Let's keep killing it. Exactly. Exactly, bro. And here's the thing, man. This is not meant to be easy. Here's the thing, man. You know that, but when it's not easy, then you feel like it's foreign. You feel like this is, there's something that, bask in this feeling. Bask in the feeling of not getting enough credit. How are you going to respond? That's always going to be something that you have to question. How will you bounce back? How will you respond from this? If you don't do anything, like I said, exactly, your character is exactly going to be shown. And here's the thing, if you don't dedicate yourself to something, if you don't pursue your purpose, just know your character is going to be lacking. And if you do pursue something that you really, really want and you do fail, but your character was never built, just know it's inevitable, man. In some sense, I do believe the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I really do believe that. So with this, do not be a person who quits in whatever you're trying to pursue. Be a person who understands this, understands these concepts, understand that this can inevitably happen, but your response is exactly going to be hopefully ideal. Hopefully. I hope, and if you're a person watching this, and you've been constantly making progress in all areas of life and all of that, right? And you never think this can be you. I hope this will eventually be you. Because like I said, the stories are going to be much better. So keep putting in the work. This is where character is built. Self-improvement purgatory is going to be for everyone. It's not just me. It's going to be for everyone. How you respond is going to be exactly what you want. You would hate to pursue something, and like I said, your character is not being built, and then you end up in the same result anyways. Dedicate yourself to something. Pursue a certain path. Pursue a certain, let's just say, pursue a certain purpose. Find avenues and vehicles in which you can pursue that purpose. And like I said, almost how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're gonna do something, do it with a good why. Do it with something that's actually worth it, and you'll be much better off for sure. But that's all I have to say for today's episode. I'm gonna get back to this. New content's going to be on the way very, very soon. Outside of the podcast, outside of all these things. So if you enjoyed this, make sure to go to subscribe. Leave a like on the video, do whatever you got to do. And other than that, thank you for your time and attention. This was episode 252 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about self-improvement purgatory in 2026. Follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, as well as make sure you go ahead and tap the link in the description as well. That will lead you to my school community. So if you want to be coached by me one-on-one, or if you want to attend some of my courses that I'm going to be creating, I will be having it all in there for sure. But other than that, welcome to the winning team. Hopefully you could take something from this. And life's hard, but hopefully you're a person that's creating the character where you can actually respond to that in an appropriate manner. Y'all have a good night. Next podcast is going to be on a day next week. Tap in and say it was good for sure. Y'all have a good night.